Good evening, viewers, and welcome to another live capture webcast. Tonight we are trying out YouTube streaming for the first time, so we are excited and a little bit nervous that something might go wrong, but everything seems to be working. One of the perks with YouTube streaming is that we can now stream in 1080p, that is higher resolution than on Facebook, so hopefully the details in capture will be clearer, crisper, and nicer. Tonight we will be picking up where we left our last webcast, which was themed on Capture 2020, what's new in there, and your questions. If you have any questions, then write them in the chat below or to the side of me or wherever that is. And I'll try to answer them during the webcast here. We will primarily, I guess, be focusing on what's new in Capture 2020, but if you have other questions, then do feel free to ask them. If you were watching our stream before I started speaking, then you were watching the lighting design of Cedric Duray. It was his contribution to the SGM New Talents Awards 2019. Which unfortunately did not reach the finals, but we quite liked it nevertheless. Unfortunately, the sound was muted for copyright reasons, which is one of the reasons we switched from Facebook. Actually, we ran into music and copyright issues and feel more confident that we're not going to get the same kind of problems on YouTube. So the theme of the evening is Capture 2020, what is new in there, taking a closer look at some of the things in there and answering your questions. So if you have questions, put them in the chat, as I said before. I have a few things that I could start speaking about. I also see that I've got a couple of questions already. So I have a few announcement character sort of things. So let's start with the automatic quality. I've opened a project file that we started working on during the last webcast. And it's kind of heavy, and this led me on to the automatic quality in Capture 2020 that I wanted to speak about. We've removed basically all of the rendering settings we've had before and replaced them with an automatic quality mode. In this automatic mode, Capture measures or asks the GPU how long time it takes to render different things. And based on this, Capture budgets the level of detail for the next frame to render. And this is good for two main reasons. One of them being that if you go into a scene with a lot of lighting that is heavier, then Capture can reduce the quality to maintain a good frame rate. But also in cases where you have a scene that is not very expensive, where Capture could actually increase the quality and give you a better visualization than you might have had before when you were choosing rendering quality manually that had to match basically the worst case of your show. In addition to this, there is also the option to turn on some quality information in the top right corner of the view. This is likely a little bit difficult to see because it's very tiny, but it gives you some FPS information and a cryptic text saying number/number det. This is a notation for the current level of detail or quality in the live view. The first number is the current level of detail, and the rightmost number after the slash is the maximum number of detail given the current size of the view. So if I increase the size of this view, it goes up to a maximum of 21 dets, versus here the maximum quality level is 17. This is a nice way of seeing basically how much more expensive it becomes to render a larger view. And also illustrates neatly that the pixel resolution on your computer screen also plays a role in all this. Either way, we do strongly recommend that you use the automatic rendering quality settings. There are 3 to choose from. The default one is the balanced one. We have one called favor quality. This is more likely to sacrifice frame rates in exchange for detail or crispness. Whereas, sorry, wrong way around. So favor performance, no, I was right, double wrong. So favor quality can sacrifice frame rate for better quality, and favor performance will work harder on maintaining your frame rate, but will sacrifice the quality on the other hand. Then there's a few settings down here, ultra down to minimal, and these are basically emergency settings for when the automatic system doesn't work. So we do not recommend you to use these fixed levels unless you absolutely need to. And either way, the current quality setting is only maintained when you open the same project file, when you open the project file on the same computer. If you save this and open the file on another computer, it will be back to the default, the automatic balanced. This means if you're exporting presentation files and that will be run on other computers, you don't have to worry about the rendering detail settings and whether they will work on the other computer. So I think it's time we tend to some of the questions we have. So if you do have questions, write them in the chat and I will try to answer them. The first one is from Connor Biddle. He is asking, is there a way to select multiple layers to delete at one time, as it gets tedious if you have a large show file? Also, is there a way to select all objects not in a layer? Good questions. Let's start with selecting multiple layers to delete them, and I will switch to the quad view here. So in the layer view, both on Windows and Mac, we have the ability to select multiple layers using the Shift key. So click on the first layer to select, hold Shift, and press on the last layer to select. This will select a continuous range of layers. You can also use on Windows the Control key, or on Mac the Command key, I believe, to select individual layers. You can also use the sorting to your advantage. So if you know that you need to select all white layers, then you can sort by the color to make sure you get all the white layers in a row. This makes it easy to select them with the Shift function. If you're working with a keyboard, you can also hold the Shift key while using the arrow buttons. You could also hold the Control key, move up and down with the arrow buttons, and select rows with the space on the keyboard. I believe that's the same on Mac as well. Now, in terms of selecting objects that are not in a layer, I don't think you could do that, actually. If anyone has an idea on how to do that, then do share that, and we are making a mental note that that would be a nice feature to have. So I hope this answers Connor's questions, and I shall be moving on to Classic 12 Studios. The question is, will there be a way to locate a file directory within the application where you can drag in files directly to a design without having import, then drag from one file to another? So I guess the question is, will there be something like maybe in the library tab, a place where you could store things in your own folder in a way for easy reuse? I would say that this is something we do have in mind to create. I don't have a date for it. I don't have a release for that at the moment. The library tab does deserve a bit more attention for the next release, that's for sure. I believe we introduced the one we have now 2 versions ago. So yes, I would say someday probably yes. Next question is from David Misakian. do you believe in MA team's words that they will include you and other Viz developers in development of the new connection protocol? Well, I don't have, or we don't have a reason to not believe in them. We have had several good conversations with MA throughout the year, open, and so far they have kept their words. Now, whether MA will be able to finish that project in a few months or whether it will take more than a year, basically we have no idea. We can only hope that they find the time to do it soon, because we know you would all quite like to have it. So fingers crossed, they will do it soon. A lot of questions. I like that. I would rather be answering questions than showing you things that you could read about or see in previous webcasts. So I'm moving on to Roy Vold. Is it possible to insert a centimeter or meter line to a quick distance between the lamps? So the answer to that is both yes and no. I'm going to add a couple of lamps so we have something to measure. I will also switch to the plot mode because it will be easier for you to see what I'm doing, and we will remove the widgets as well. So here we have So here we have 3 fixtures at some distance. Now I can use the grid to go roughly how far apart they are. But we do have in the library the distance tool. Now I know some users would prefer a different way of measuring, but this is the tool we have. So you would typically drag it out of the library, which is the first opportunity to align the starting point of the measurement. You double click on the other end and snap it to the endpoint you wish to measure. You can see the distance both in the paper view as well as under selected items in the distance field here. And if you also want to measure the other distance we have here, I would use the quick copy, snap the starting point where the other one ended, double click to select the endpoint, and snap that to the center of the second fixture and discover, amazing, I managed to place it 2 meters from the first fixture purely by coincidence. Or actually, if we go in here and increase the precision to full, we shall discover that I missed 1 millimeter of the distance. But the distance tool in the library is what you would need to use to measure the distance between fixtures. So, moving on to William Ellebracht's question. Can we make a filter with all layers hidden? I believe it's an answer to the question how to select objects not in a layer, and that would be to make a filter with all layers hidden to discover which objects remain. So if we go back to Dockhouse 2020, what he's basically saying is that we can create a new filter. Let's switch back to quad mode. So a new filter with all the layers. Let's apply that, but with all the layers removed. So range select all the layers and press return. Mass editing removes everything. And this is where we discover I've got something here. Several objects actually. It's the logo, which apparently has no layer. So the answer to the question was create a filter, hide all the layers, apply the filter, and whatever is left are the objects that have no layer. That's brilliant. Thank you. Anthony Cahill is asking, is it possible to group a single item into multiple groups? I haven't been able to do this in the past. So the answer is no. It is not possible to place an object in multiple groups. What you can do, however, is you can place a fixture in multiple fixture groups. So I have in fact a few fixtures here that are in multiple groups. So there's a number of magic dot fixtures in this rig. Let's clear the filter or yeah. So here I have a few magic dots rigged on the back truss, and they are in two groups, two fixture groups each. But object groups know only one group per object. Moving on to Timo's question. I think I've got the last name cut in half possibly. Timo is asking or saying, when I close and reopen my project, all my fixtures are off and values like pan and tilt are at 0, 2. I'm not using DMX at this point. Do I need to check a box? What am I missing? Good question. So the situation is as follows. Imagine we have, say, a blank project. Let's throw in a couple of fixtures. A quick copy is my friend. Let's switch to live mode. Select them all and turn them on. Might as well do something more with them so we can tell the difference. Now, if I save the project file at this point, and I will, so let's save this, desktop, webcast 1, and reopen the project file, the fixtures are blacked out, and if we select them, we will see that the pan and tilt is reset again. And the reason is that they are not patched, and Timo wrote that he's not using DMX at this point. That is, I haven't patched the fixtures. If you want to preserve the state of the fixtures, you need to patch them, because what Capture needs to save is the DMX. So we've just done the equivalent of turning the rig off, returning the next day and turning everything on again without having any of the fixtures connected to a console. This is pretty much what would happen. If instead I were to patch the fixtures, then do something with them, let's throw in a color. That was very dark. Save and reopen. Then the fixtures do preserve their state. So patching the fixtures is the answer. I shall move on to Joe Martin's question. Hello, Capture friends. Hello, Joe. Is there a way in the future to have a left view include plot information? I'm not sure I follow the question. Capture has 3 views, the alpha, beta, and gamma view, and any of them can be switched into the plot mode. In addition to this, there is also a custom option where you can choose manually how you want it to look. So we could have a plot solid perspective, for instance. That is a plot colored 3D view. We could also have it wireframe in plot colors. That is, now we see through all the walls. And on top of that, we can switch between orthographic and perspective. But you can do this in any of the 3 views. So I'm not sure what you meant by a left view there. I shall move on. A question from William Ellebracht. I know that you need MA hardware to send DMX for capture control, but can you use MA on PC and output to capture on the same PC, or do you need 2 different computers? If you have MA hardware, you can absolutely run MA on PC on the same computer as capture. That is not a problem. You do not need to have separate computers. More computers often means more monitors though, so from a screen space real estate perspective, it's more useful to have lots of monitor space, but it can be the same computer. Geotest test is asking, is there a way to make a favorite list or folder for the fixture? We always use the same machine in our park. So the closest you will get at the moment is the recent category of the library, where you can see, I think, up to the 30 most recent things you dragged in from the library into your design. Obviously, having a favorite system is something many have asked for and something we hope to add soon. Whoa. Moving on, Roy Arne is asking, is it possible to get the text bigger on the distance bar? And I suppose, let's switch this to a top view in paper. So I suppose Arne is referring to the distancing tool and the size of the text of the actual measurement, which you do need to zoom in quite a bit to see at the moment. The answer is yes. We do this by using, in the Design tab, plot styles. So if I create a new plot style, you can see there are a number of properties here for sizes of different text. So there is a measurement text size here. Let's double that to 160 millimeters and apply the plot style to the view. Now you can see that the size of the text increased. So obviously you can type 0.2 meters or something else here. The size of the text is given in real-world sizes because it is a 2-scale plot after all, so it does zoom with the rest of the drawing. And I would also add that you can also change the size of the arrows here very much the same way as you can change the size of the text. And there are many other things you can customize in the plot styles as well. So you can build various plot styles, apply them to different views, and also once you're working on the actual plot, of course you can choose the plot style here and apply the plot style you need individually for all of the insets in the plot. Many questions, I like it. Moving on, Gasser Christoph is asking, how do we merge two ArtNet universes in universe A? So Capture does not provide the ability to do any ArtNet merging at all. Capture does support streaming ACN merging based on universe and per channel priority, but we have not implemented any ArtNet merging. Depending on what console you use, you may be able to use your console to do the merging. Otherwise, you might need to use some other kind of ArtNet device to do this. We've actually started receiving a few ArtNet merging feature requests recently, for the first time actually in many, many years. So it is quite possible that we will look into some kind of ArtNet merging in an upcoming release. Then I wish I had learned the Cyrillic alphabet. Andrei Rybakov, maybe? I'm sorry if I got that wrong. He is asking, how do I change the device group mode in the Fixtures tab? So we do have a column in the Fixture tab called Mode that corresponds to the DMX mode of the fixtures. Let's locate a moving light like the alpha spot. Here I can double click on a mode cell to change the mode of that one fixture. If I have multiple fixtures I want to change the mode of, it is better to select them all, switch to the Design tab, the Selected Items category, scroll down to Mode, and change it from here, because then it applies to all of the fixtures I had selected. Outream Creative is asking, will this stream be published afterwards? It definitely will. I'm not even sure we know exactly how that works yet. Either it's just going to be there when we end the stream, or we are going to upload something afterwards. We will see. But yes, it will be here afterwards. Then there is a rather lengthy clarification here that I'm going to skip for the moment and move on to another Cyrillic name. Merkirov, maybe. It would be nice to see measurement in wireframe view and not only the arrows. I couldn't agree more. This would definitely be nice. So we agree. Cyril Dupont is asking, is it possible to add the possibility for us to have a movable focus point? I mean, at the moment it starts at 0. It could be interesting to start at 50%. Then we can move it to real value. I'm sorry, I don't quite follow this one. I think you are referring to pan and tilt focus points for moving lights. I'm going to have to skip that one for now. Cedric de Roy is asking, in the plot window paperwork, can you assign your own logo as the default one? What you can do is assign a drawing logo in the project category of the design tab. This logo would be used in the reports, but in the plots, where we can right-click to insert an image, the default image is the capture logo. That is a very good point, actually. We should probably look into using the drawing logo here, possibly. So we shall add that to the wish list for the future. Thanks for pointing that out. Marco Salimeki is asking, is it possible to draw the floor freely by drawing? So the answer here is no. Capture does not have any tools that would allow you to draw a polygon or something like that. You are restricted to the forms in the library, like the box and the cylinder. To make up for this, we have a number of import possibilities. So I would recommend maybe using SketchUp for that, or possibly Blender. Of course, we also import DWG and other file formats, but to do that kind of thing, we would recommend using some sort of 3D modeling software or CAD software to do that. Cyril Dupont, whose question I read before about the starting points, he was talking about focusing with gobos. Cyril, would you please mail us at support@capture.se so we can ask a few questions back to better understand what you need there, and hopefully we can sort something out. Andrei Lavrinovic is asking, hello, will we have some CO2 guns or sparkles or other effects visualization in the near future? I believe the answer to that is yes. I can't be too specific, but it's pretty high up on the priority list at the moment, since it's been requested since like forever. Then a question from Mr. I believe Rybakov. Thank you for your answer about fixture modes. The next question is, how do I make DMX mover and DMX rotation work on the same group? And how does the motion construct work? So here I'm going to direct you to the Capture 2019 tutorial series here on the YouTube page, where we did make a special episode about the DMX mover and rotator. You will find it if you look for the flying cow and the UFO thumbnail. It doesn't cover the motion construct though, and I think we might need to save that for a future tutorial, or maybe even a webcast. So now we reach the point where I have answered quite a few questions that aren't really specific to Capture 2020, and I do have one thing specifically that I wanted to show you that was new in 2020. So I'm going to do that now. And it relates to the connectivity with the etc EOS console and a few things that are important there. So I'm going to create a new project file. I'm going to add, I think we will add a box to use as a floor. A nice trick when using boxes as floors, which I don't think we have mentioned before, is that you could actually type in 0 as the height of a box, thus creating a perfectly thin flat surface. So it is not necessary to give the floor something like a 1 millimeter thickness or something like that. You can just put 0. Excuse me. In fact, if you're making projection screens, that is also very useful for making sure you get a perfectly thin projection screen. Now, as I'm drawing this for the purpose of connecting with the EOS, I'm going to add, let's keep it simple, let's add a bunch of source force a few meters above the stage. Let's clone this one and have a total of 8 of fixtures. I'm moving quite fast here because what I want to show you is more about the connectivity than the drawing of the fixtures. Now, in order to connect and work together with the EOS in a meaningful way here, there are two things to keep in mind. First of all, the fixtures need to be patched to DMX or I will not be able to control them with the console. So I will drag and drop patch them into the first universe. And second, we need to assign channel numbers. Channel numbers are how you select the fixtures or dimmers in the console, and we need to have matching channel numbers in Capture with the console. The easiest way to do that is using the sequential channeling. It defaults to starting at channel 1, so I will go with that. And now I have 8 source force on channel 1 through 8. So now if I start, okay, I was way too fast there, EOS. The next thing to make sure in EOS is that you have some sort of network protocol output, either streaming ACN or artnet. In this case, I'm going to use artnet, and I've set it as the default, which automatically enables it for all of the universes unless you've gone in and done a manual override. There is nothing I need to do with OSC. Capture will work both with OSC 1.0 and 1.1, so that is fine. Now I have a Nomad dongle in my laptop here, so I can run as primary, but you could also run the offline for visualization mode that works equally well with Capture. Now what happens if I switch to the Universes tab is that the console link with EOS has been established. And the way this worked right away is that in the Connectivity tab in the options, I've entered the IP address of the console. If you're running on the same computer, you can type in 127 mark 0 mark 0 mark 1, which is the IP address that can always be used for the same computer. This means that although I'm not connected to a Wi-Fi or a network with my laptop, I can still connect to EOS. And using artnet, although now I'm wondering whether that actually works, but we shall see soon. I'm now ready to start working with the fixtures. Sorry, one more thing. We need to have a show, of course. So let's have channels 1 through 8 at address 1. There we go. Now you will see that as I'm selecting, and of course it doesn't work. Now what? Patch. It's the artnet. So this is not going well for me. So apart from this, we also need the DMX to actually flow from EOS into Capture. Otherwise, although it looks like everything is set up, nothing will actually work. So we need to find the DMX from EOS coming into Capture. Now I think there may be a problem in that I don't have a network connected. So it seems this is not going to work for me after all, and this is not the time to troubleshoot. But I've shown you the important steps anyway, and that is to make sure that you've given channel numbers to the fixtures in Capture that match the channel numbers in EOS. I just wish I had had the DMX. Let's give it a super fast test. I bet the house network administrator will be thrilled about my artnet. And once I've done this, I shall see if we have some more questions to answer. So thanks everyone for bringing your questions today, especially since it's the first time we're on YouTube and maybe you haven't used it that much before, and neither have we. It seems I'm not going to get this to work today. Networking can be some black magic, and I should have tested this before the webcast. Lessons learned. Anyway, let's cover a few more questions tonight. So we have a question from Anthony Cahill. One thing I've always been wondering about is the possibility of freehand drawing 3D shapes. For example, when I build a stage and want to have the front with a gradual taper to offstage. So again, just as with drawing freehand polygons or other shapes, your best bet is to draw them in another software and import those files into Capture. So let's quit EOS. We have in the import, or through the import model function, support for a number of formats. There's 3ds, Cinema 4D, SketchUp, GLTF, DWG, and OBJ. So there's pretty much no 3D modeling software that you cannot use to get objects into Capture, and quite a few of them are actually free. Blender is one of them. SketchUp is almost free, depending on what you're doing with it. If you work professionally with SketchUp, you're supposed, or you should, definitely buy a license from them. It is not very expensive, especially in relation to what you get. So I can really recommend SketchUp and Blender for such purposes. Next question from John Bizas. When we export fixture data in XML for HOG4, if we try to patch that file into HOG, many of the fixtures have different name in HOG. Is there any hint to fix that? Unfortunately, there isn't. When you export fixture data for, well, XML files, let's call it test. When you use XML for HOG4, the next step that occurs when I hit the export button is that I'm asked to name the fixtures in the patch file. And these names have to match spot on the names of the library in the HOG. Unfortunately, we do not have access to a list of all the fixture names in the HOG so that we could pre-match these in any way. This is something you would have to do manually during the export phase. It would be nice if in the HOG there was an option like we do in Capture when we import CSV to pick the correct fixtures during import, but unfortunately there isn't. So I have no workarounds to offer. Andrei Lavrinovich says, thank you for answering, my pleasure. Is it possible to use snapping tool in different directions to connect other models with library models? Yes and no. I'm going to use a few boxes to illustrate my point here. So the snapping we have in Capture works on an edge-to-edge basis. So I can snap the bottom edge of one box to the top edge of another box, and sideways too, of course. And then on top of that, there is the intersection snap. So when more than one edge align, in effect, we can snap corners as well, at least of the boxes here that are perfectly square. There is, however, also a function that is called swing to selection that rotates a view so that it aligns with an object of another angle. And now if you notice, we're snapping to the edges of a box that is actually not orthogonal. So this is a trick you can use to have snapping along other axes by aligning the view with the object that is rotated. This is a feature that is very useful with things like tilted truss constructions, where you want to work with a truss construction as if it were not tilted, untilted. So I hope that answers that question. Now, I think we are nearing an end of the webcast, so I can see there are still some questions I haven't answered, and the latency is very low over YouTube, we've learned, so I will not be able to answer any more questions if you haven't sent them already, that is for sure. Joe Martin is asking another question. When I patch a camera in my CAMSYS console, I want to receive the DMX information in my desk as when I focus, pan, and tilt. So the autofocus functionality in Capture that lets you focus fixtures in Capture and have the DMX sent to the console is what he's referring to, does not work when moving cameras. So if you patch the camera of a view to DMX and move that in Capture, this does not talk back to the console. This is something we would like to do one day, actually, of course, that we haven't, so it's on our wish list for the future, but I can't offer any workaround at the moment. Eugene Merkulov is asking, how can I quickly see how many identical objects I have in a project, such as chairs or other objects from the library? I'm not aware of any way of doing that, to be honest. It's not a question I've heard before, so it's quite interesting. If you would like to write to us to support, I would quite like to learn more about in what situation you would use that and work with that. Peter van Engeland is asking, what's the best way to import Vectorworks? This is a difficult question to answer. We have in the reference manual a step-by-step guide for getting designs with fixture positions into Capture, but Vectorworks is a very feature-rich software where exports can be changed in many different ways, and unfortunately it is not really our area of expertise. So it may be that you have some very special needs, but in general we recommend DWG with instrument schedules, as that is the only way to get correct fixture positions, although even there are some pitfalls. Some have suggested using 3ds instead of DWG because then they can get materials over, but that may create a little bit more work with the fixtures if you're not lucky. And finally, the last question I will answer tonight is from William Elbracht. Is there a possibility to add multiple material sections on imported 3D models similar to the human models in Capture instead of mapping the entire object? So when we import an object into Capture, I think I have something on the desktop here, yes. Here I have the low polygon people from Sketchfab that I used in the Dockhouse project for the people. Now if I double click on one of them, you will see that each individual here is a single object. Whoa, no. So if I drag these into the design and make a slight scale modification, since I think those people are not giants. And now something went terribly wrong. Anyway. So here is ambient lighting. Thank you. So here we can see that each person comes in as one object, and in the materials there's basically one material per person. There is no way in Capture that you can now split up this object and individually map, say, the skirt or the t-shirt of this object. The only way you could do that is if you prepared for it in the software you are exporting from. So if in the source software you had broken up the model into various parts, that would be the only way to still have various parts inside Capture. You could do it by putting them in different layers, using different objects, or putting them in different groups. So if you're importing objects into Capture, it's good to prepare the objects a little bit so they work with you once you are in Capture. All right, that was a pretty long Q&A session. I'm thankful for all your questions, and I think we did pretty well on YouTube despite the minor hiccup in the beginning. So thanks for staying with us. And I hope to see you soon again. We will be back here on YouTube in a few weeks, and I will be announcing the topic about 1 week before the next webcast. So thanks everyone for watching, and see you soon again.